The project is finished, the new equipment is installed, or the new system is running, or the consultant has delivered their work and moved on. And there is a strong temptation to consider the whole thing a success and get on with the business. But finishing a project is not the same as gaining from it. And the gap between the two is where a surprising amount of effort and money quietly goes to waste. A change that is completed but never measured might be delivering half of what you hoped or nothing at all, and you would never know. A new way of working that is introduced but never embedded slowly gives way to the old way. And within months, the business is back where it started, with only the invoice to show for it. The real return on a project comes not from finishing it, but from measuring what it actually achieved and making the improvement stick. And that is the work most businesses skip. In the next few minutes, we are going to walk through how to do it. One note before we begin. This channel is educational only. We are not a government agency. We are not affiliated with or endorsed by Go Business Enterprise Singapore or any government body, and nothing here is official advice. We name no schemes, no criteria, and no figures, because those change over time. So we will always point you back to the official source, gobusiness.gov.sg, to confirm what actually applies to your situation before you rely on any of it. Finishing is not the same as gaining. There is a quiet assumption behind most completed projects that finishing equals succeeding. That once the work is done, the benefit simply arrives on its own. It does not. Finishing is an activity. Gaining is an outcome, and the two can be surprisingly far apart. A business can install exactly what it planned, tick every box on the project, and still see very little change in the thing the project was supposed to improve, because the finishing was never the point, the improvement was. This gap is uncomfortable to look at, which is precisely why so many businesses avoid looking, preferring the clean feeling of a completed project to the messier question of whether it actually worked. But the whole reason to undertake a project is the gain at the end of it. And if you never check whether that gain arrived, you are flying blind, repeating projects on faith and hoping they help. The businesses that improve over time are the ones willing to ask the awkward question, did this actually deliver what we wanted? And to act on the honest answer. Capture the baseline or you cannot measure. Here is a hard truth that catches many businesses too late. You cannot measure an improvement if you never recorded what things were like before. Measuring a gain requires two pictures, the before and the after. And the before can only be captured before the project starts, never afterwards. Once the change is in place, the old state is gone, and any attempt to recall it is guesswork colored by how you feel about the project. So the discipline of measuring outcomes actually begins right at the start, by capturing a clear picture of how things stand today. Whatever it is you hope the project will improve, so that later you have something honest to compare against. This is easy to skip in the excitement of starting, and its absence is only felt at the end, when you want to prove the project worked and realize you have nothing to measure it against. If you take one practical thing from this, let it be to record the before, because without it, every later claim of improvement is just a feeling. Measure the outcome, not the activity. When businesses do try to measure a project, they often measure the wrong thing, counting the activity rather than the outcome. It is easy and satisfying to report that the training was delivered, the software was installed, the process was documented, because those things are concrete and clearly done. But none of them is the point. The point is what changed as a result. Whether the work actually got faster, the errors actually fell, the capacity actually grew, or whatever the real goal was. Activity is what you did. Outcome is what it achieved, and only the second one tells you whether the project was worth doing. Measuring activity feels like measurement, but it is really just confirming that you completed the tasks which you already knew. The harder and more valuable question is whether completing those tasks move the thing that actually matters to the business. Always push past the activity to the outcome, because a pile of completed activities that changed nothing is not a success, however busy it looked. Give it time before you judge. A new way of working almost always performs worse before it performs better, because people are learning it, adjusting to it, and stumbling through the awkwardness of the unfamiliar. If you measure the outcome too soon, in the first raw weeks after the change, you will capture the dip and mistake it for failure, and you may abandon something that would have paid off handsomely once it settled. Real gains take time to appear, So judging a project by its earliest results is like judging a garden the week after planting. Give the change enough time to bed in, for the learning curve to flatten and the new way to become the normal way before you take the measurement that counts. This requires patience and a little faith through the uncomfortable early period, but it is the only way to see the true effect rather than the temporary disruption. Measure too early and you will misjudge almost everything, punishing good projects for the ordinary cost of change. Separate the signal from the noise. When you do see a change in the numbers, honesty requires you to ask how much of it the project actually caused, because a business is a noisy place where many things move at once. Sales may have risen because of your project, or because the market improved, or because a competitor stumbled, and it takes a clear head to separate what the project did from what would have happened anyway. This matters because fooling yourself in either direction is costly. Crediting a project for gains it did not create leads you to repeat things that do not work, while dismissing a real gain as coincidence robs you of the confidence to do more of what does. You will rarely get a perfectly clean answer, but the discipline of asking the question, of looking honestly at what else was going on, gets you far closer to the truth than simply assuming the project deserves all the credit or none of it. Attribute honestly, and your understanding of what actually helps your business grows sharper with every project. Write down what actually happened. Memory is a poor and flattering historian, smoothing over the struggles and reshaping the story to fit how things turned out. And a business that relies on it loses the real lessons of every project. So write down what actually happened, plainly and while it is fresh. The results you measured, yes, but also the surprises, the things that went wrong, the parts that were harder or easier than expected, and what you would do differently. This honest record is worth far more than a tidy success story, because it is where the genuine learning lives, the specific and hard-won knowledge that makes your next project better. It also protects you from the slow rewriting that memory performs, where a project that was actually a struggle becomes, in retrospect, a triumph, and the difficult truths that could have taught you something are quietly lost. Keep the record honest even where it is unflattering, because a project you understood truly, including its failures, is worth more to the business than one you only remember fondly. And funnels the building to those who need it. Once you know what the project achieved, that knowledge is only useful if it reaches the people who need it, and reaches them in a form they can actually understand. This starts with yourself and the people running the business, who deserve a plain, honest account of whether the effort paid off, free of the spin that makes everything sound like a win. It may also extend to others you must answer to, whoever they are. And to them too, the value is in a clear and truthful account rather than a flattering one. Reporting is not about producing an impressive document. It is about turning what you learned into something others can see and act on, so the knowledge does not stay locked in one person's head. A plain report that tells the truth, including the parts that did not go to plan, builds the kind of trust and shared understanding that makes the next project easier to run. Say what happened. Say it clearly and let the honesty of it do the work. Turn the new way into a habit. The most fragile moment in any improvement is right after the project ends, because the change is new, the old way is still familiar, and the natural pull of habit is backwards. An improvement only becomes real when the new way of working stops being the new way and simply becomes the way, done without thinking, without reminders, without effort. Getting there takes deliberate attention in the weeks after the project, reinforcing the new behavior until it hardens into routine, rather than assuming that because the change was introduced it will automatically hold. This is a step that separates lasting improvement from temporary disruption. A business that installs a better way and then relaxes will often find the old way creeping back the moment attention drifts elsewhere, and within months the expensive project has quietly undone itself. Turning the change into a habit is unglamorous, patient work, but it is the difference between an improvement that lasts and one that was only ever borrowed for a while. Give the improvement an owner. Just as the project needed an owner while it ran, the improvement needs an owner after it ends. Someone whose job it is to see that the new way keeps happening long after the excitement has faded. Without this, the improvement belongs to no one, and things that belong to no one are the first to slide when the business gets busy. The owner does not have to do everything, but they carry the responsibility for noticing when the new way is slipping, and for gently pulling it back on course before the slide becomes permanent. This is especially important in a small business, where there is no system quietly enforcing standards and everything depends on someone caring enough to keep it alive. Give the improvement a name and a keeper, someone accountable for it continuing to work, and you dramatically raise the odds that it survives the months and years ahead rather than fading the moment everyone's attention moves to the next urgent thing. Guard against the slide back. Even with a habit forming and an owner watching, there is a persistent gravitational pull back towards the old way of doing things, and pretending otherwise is how improvements quietly die. The old way is comfortable. It is what everyone knows in their bones, and under pressure, when a deadline looms or a busy season hits, people revert to it without even noticing, because it is the path of least resistance. Guarding against this drift is an ongoing job, not a one-time fix, a matter of staying alert to the small reversions and correcting them before they become the norm again. It helps to understand that the slide back is not a failure of character but the ordinary physics of habit, which means it should be expected and planned for rather than treated as a surprise. Watch for the old way reasserting itself, especially when the business is under strain, and gently insist on the new way until enough time has passed that it too becomes the comfortable default that no one has to think about. Document it so it outlives people. An improvement that lives only in the heads of the people who ran the project is one resignation away from disappearing, because when they leave, the knowledge of why things are done this way leaves with them, and the business slowly forgets. So write the new way down, not in exhaustive detail, but enough that someone new could understand how things are meant to work and why, turning private knowledge into something the business owns rather than borrows from individuals. This is how an improvement outlives the people who made it, becoming part of how the business simply operates, rather than a fragile arrangement dependent on particular staff remembering. Documentation is tedious and easy to postpone forever, but a business that never writes anything down is perpetually vulnerable, relearning the same lessons every time someone leaves and quietly losing the gains it worked hard to win. Capture the new way plainly enough to survive the people who built it, and you turn a personal achievement into a lasting part of the business itself. Feed the lessons into the next project. A finished project is not just a result. It is a source of hard-won knowledge about how your business handles change, and the businesses that improve fastest are the ones that carry that knowledge forward instead of starting each project from scratch. Every project teaches you something about how long things really take, about what your business is good and bad at, about the kinds of change that stick and the kinds that do not. And all of that is fuel for doing the next one better. So take the lessons you honestly recorded and feed them into how you plan and run whatever comes next, closing the loop between one project and the following one. This is how a business gets steadily better at improving itself, turning each project into a rehearsal for the next rather than an isolated event you learn nothing from. The gain from a project is not only the improvement it delivers, it is also the wisdom it leaves behind, and only businesses that pause to collect that wisdom get to compound it over the years. A closing thought. So here is what to carry away. Finishing a project is not the same as gaining from it, and the real return comes from measuring what actually changed and making the improvement stick. Capture the before at the very start so you have something to measure against. Judge the outcome rather than the activity, and give the change enough time to settle before you judge it at all. Separate what the project truly caused from the noise around it. Write down honestly what happened, and report it plainly to the people who need to know. Then do the harder work of making it last, turning the new way into a habit, giving the improvement an owner, guarding against the slide back, and documenting it so it outlives the people who built it before feeding everything you learned into the next project. Remember too that everything here is general and educational. We are not a government agency and we are not affiliated with or endorsed by anyone. And we name no schemes, criteria, or figures because those change. So confirm what actually applies to you at gobusiness.gov.sg. If this helped you think beyond the finish line, subscribe for more plain English Singapore grant explainers, and we will keep helping you turn finished projects into lasting gains, one improvement that sticks at a time.